Hello and welcome to this Cambridge Assessment presentation on collocation, brought to you by Linguaskill. Today we'll look at collocation, which means words that go together. I'll give you some tips on learning collocations and show you how test questions are designed to assess your knowledge of collocation, which I hope will help you to achieve a higher test score. We'll look at some example test questions and we'll try answering them together. Here's some information about the Linguaskill test. It's a computer-based multi-level test, meaning that it can be taken anywhere by test takers of all ability levels. Linguaskill assesses your English language proficiency using a huge variety of test questions and accurately gives test takers a language proficiency level on the CEFR scale. It's an adaptive test, meaning that an algorithm is used to give test takers questions of various difficulties depending on their performance, in order to accurately determine the test taker's level of English at the end of the test. Let's start with some advice or tips. The first tip is to read the words around the gap to help you decide what's missing. If you are given options to fill the gap, you must choose the correct one. The options are often all the same word type. Here, the options are all verbs, so you need to identify which of the verbs collocates with the words around the gap. A good way to learn collocations is to study vocabulary in use, for example in sentences, rather than single word vocabulary lists. In the example here, the correct option is D, enter, because the sentence mentions a running race. The second tip to help you remember collocations is to make collocation flashcards with high frequency verbs and nouns, as shown in these examples. Pocket-sized flashcards are useful study aids and you can carry them with you for on-the-go language learning. Or you could make flashcard style notes on your phone or tablet. Now let's have a look at some example gapped sentences and try answering them. Let's try answering some example gapped sentences. Here you can see 6 separate sentences, each with a single word removed. The possible options are given to the right of each sentence, and only one option is correct. You'll notice that the options given for the first sentence are all verbs, whereas the options for the second sentence are all adjectives. In order to assess your knowledge of collocation, tests present options that are all the same word type and with similar meanings. You need to choose the option that collocates with another word in the sentence. If you look at the first set of options, enter, go, and move have similar meanings, so they test whether or not you know which verb collocates with other words in the sentence. The correct answer is enter because it collocates with password in the sentence. The second example here involves collocations with competition, which we saw on the blue flashcard on the previous slide. And if you remember, we used the adjective stiff to describe difficult opponents. If we're going for a job interview, for example, and we know that the other people going for the interview are highly qualified, we might say that there is stiff competition. Now, have a go at choosing the correct option for the next 4 gapped sentences. I'll give you half a minute to answer these final 4 sentences, then we'll go through the answers together. Okay, let's go through the answers to these gap sentences and look at the collocations. The answer to the third sentence on this slide about Paul is missed, which collocates with the point. To miss the point means to not understand the true meaning or reason. One of the incorrect options, saw, also collocates with the point, but has the opposite meaning. To see the point means to understand the meaning or reason. But it's the wrong choice for this sentence because the sentence is negative. Paul didn't understand. Moving on, the next sentence should read, I missed the bus. Some languages, such as Italian, will express this as, I lost the bus. So this sentence is really testing your knowledge of verb collocation in English that may be different from your mother tongue. The next sentence should read, he broke the record, because we talk about breaking records or limits, not about winning them. But again, one is included as an incorrect option to test your knowledge of collocation. The final gapped sentence should read, don't waste time, because we describe time not used well as wasted time, not missed time. Here we have some examples of flashcards you can make either digitally or in paper form. On the previous slide, we saw some gapped sentences using miss, and I've added the collocations we saw in those examples to the flashcard you can see here. Now, let's look at the other two flashcards, the yellow and blue ones. The next slide has a multiple choice gap fill activity for you to try, which uses only the verbs make and take. Let's study these flashcards together now, and then you can apply your learning to the next activity. First, let's look at make. Some of these collocations are easy to understand, others are idiomatic. The first collocation with make is idiomatic, to make up your mind, which means to decide. To make sure means to be certain. To make a difference means to do something worthwhile or valuable. And finally, to make the most of it means to get the full value or potential out of it. Now let's look at the take card. To take a chance or risk is pretty straightforward and easy to understand. To take advantage is idiomatic and means to use the good things in a situation. To take it into consideration means to think about it. To take some time means to spend time doing or thinking about something. So let's try putting either make or take into a multiple choice gap fill text. Here's a multiple choice gap fill text, similar to those you might find if you take the Linguaskill test. In this case, there are 7 gaps and all of them need past forms of the verbs take or make, because the gapped sentences are in the past simple. Now, I'd like you to try to answer all 7 questions. Try to remember the collocations we just saw in the flashcards, as the same ones appear here. And remember the tip to read around the gap to identify words that collocate with either take or make. I'll give you 2 minutes to answer all 7 questions, so just focus on the sentences with gaps rather than understanding every detail in the text. Then we'll go through the answers together. Ready? Go. Here are the answers. Hopefully you remembered some of the collocations from the flashcards we looked at. Take some time to check your answers now. I hope you found this presentation useful. You can find extra study materials online at the link shown here. And there are other webinars like this in our series that you can enjoy. And the best thing is that all these resources are free. Good luck with your studies and good luck with your English test. Goodbye.